and we give them high quality content. But these days, certainly in Australia, and as I travel around the world, I see it happening in most places, we have to give them content in different formats as well. We have to give them visual content. For example, in Australia, radio as an industry is at the top of the social media engagement scale, higher than television, higher than fast-moving consumer goods. We are the most successful industry at engaging our audience. That was on the figures last year. And certainly we have a couple of duos on radio that have got higher Facebook likes than people that are on television or movie stars. So, you know, radio is getting, in Australia and I know around the world, is getting very good at heightening the interactivity that we have with people and the responsiveness. Now don't forget that, you know, even though we might be now indulging in video clips on our websites and podcasts and, you know, we all have Snapchat accounts and Facebook and Twitter and whatever's going, actually, radio's on too, before any other medium, which is part of why we're ahead of the game. But we also can't forget what makes radio radio. And I think that's, with respect to my US colleagues, when I've been over there, now they're remembering what makes radio radio, but they forgot for a little while. And that is local, live and local content. It's being relevant to your local community, it's being part of your local community, and it's giving people news, information about what's going on. It's also being an emergency services broadcaster for disasters. Now, in Australia, the music streaming services, Spotify and Pandora, like to say that they're radio as well. They're not radio. They don't broadcast one-to-many free-to-air. Yes, they stream on the web. Good for them. Yes, they have however many billion impressions. Are they regular impressions? Are they the same people? Why aren't they making a lot of money? So that's, I always like to make that distinction because in Australia it's been quite a campaign by Spotify and Pandora to try and characterise themselves as radio. And there's a reason for that. It's because radio is doing what it does best, and that is offering good, high-quality content, but across all platforms. And that's our appeal in Australia to advertisers as well. We're giving them integrated offerings. We're not just giving them spots and docs and 30-second commercials. So I also think it's interesting to note that in Australia, 60% of radio listeners have engaged with radio on one of radio's social media platforms. So being early adopters in radio is something that we have been of all new technology. Instead of saying, oh, isn't it terrible, here's a new social media site, this is going to compete with us. Radio in Australia, and I know around the world, and I'm sure Jay will talk about it as well, says, oh, fantastic, here's another tool that I have that I can use. So I guess I would say we've got to be more involved. We've got our DAB Plus chipset, free-to-air broadcast radio in a mobile phone, the first one in the world. It's selling well. It's the top-selling LG phone in Australia now, is the DAB Plus phone. And they're equally impressive results around the world. We've got to be in the car dashboard, not only as an app, but we've got to be there as broadcast, because car manufacturers will tell you that they don't want to only rely on IP delivery of radio in an emergency. So they're not planning to take out the broadcast. They just don't talk about it. So I guess we just do what we're doing, but we do it across more platforms and we do it smarter, and we don't forget what the strengths of radio are, which is live, local, engaging, high-quality content.
Thanks, Joan. Jake, I want to come to you next. I showed the success of your business earlier when I put up a slide from your 2016 annual report showing how much money you made. So we want to learn the secrets from you. How much is radio contributing to Astro's bottom line? And what are the innovative things you're doing to keep it as a strong part of your business?
We contribute 7% of revenue, but 25% of profit before tax. So, so although it's a small amount going in, but because of the cost of running the stations are not as high as TV. And, the main cost is, of course, staff-related cost of talent. So that's quite considerable. What was your second question again? Thinking of the money.
What else? Well, the first one's about show me the money, so that's great. What are you doing though to stay that way?
Okay. Very interesting question, because I get lots of, I speak about this a lot into universities and students, and whenever I talk about this, I tell a story about my daughter who's 12, and I started off as an announcer, and I still have a show on Hits and Mix that does non-stop mixing. So very proud of being the Jake man from Hits, but so my daughter was downstairs with a friend doing a dance practice, and so I came down trying to be the cool dad, and I looked at the kids and said, what do y'all listen to? I was hoping they'd say Hits, but they didn't. They said, I'm listening to my Spotify, listening to my iPod, listening to this, and none of them listen to Hits. But one girl said, yeah, but we see Hits a lot. And that was the time that I realized that we cannot be platform, we cannot be this platform that we've usually made in our head. So what has happened is, to me now, radio, I operate like a content provider, content aggregator, content provider, and because the way the surveys are structured, it is a perceptual survey. People will take the books, and I'm sure, Joan, you know, they've done handwriting analysis and how people take books and stuff, in Nielsen and GFK. I want to be in your head. So you might not listen to me, but as long as you think you listen to me, I'm a bit happy. So we're across all these platforms, social media, and in fact, I was talking about this, and it says we produce more video than TV now, which is quite shocking for me. So we're in your face a lot, and we want to be disruptive at the same time. In fact, I don't want to be known as radio also. So to me, so we produce great content. If you're listening to us, seeing us, watching us, touching us, feeling us, experiencing us, that's great, and that's worked really well for us. Moving away from the traditional radio.
Can I make a comment there? But it is still true. I would imagine Malaysia as around the rest of the world that the majority of radio listening is done via broadcast. There's a lot of engagement on social media and on websites and looking at video. But let's not forget that we still need to keep our broadcast offerings strong.
But would you believe that the linear listenership will fade off? Because kids won't have time to listen to radio as they are. They're picking it up by podcasts on other mediums and devices. And
No, because we've been looking at our ratings over the last 10 years, and we've been looking at trends. What we've found is that, say, the 10 to 17 year age group, about 10 years ago, they probably listened to 6 hours a week of radio. Then with the next age group was listening to, 10 hours. The next age group, the 18s to 25s, were listening to a little bit more. And as each age group, as you went through each age group, the listening increased as people became busier and had less time to be, fiddling around, and they were in the car a lot more, and all that stuff. Now, over the 10 years, all that's happened is those proportions have remained about the same. And our reach into 10 to 17-year-olds is 87%. Now, they're listening for now 5 hours and 30 minutes a week instead of 6 hours. The 18 to 25-year-olds are listening for probably 7 hours instead of 8 hours that they were listening to. So, given everything else they've got to do, it's not such a big drop. But I think part of the reason, and we've tracked this over 10 years, so you can see the trend, that yes, listening has gone down a little bit in each age group, but it appears as people get older and they have, and they have more to do and their lives change, radio takes a different place in their life. Whether they're listening via the internet or a podcast or live, they're still listening. And I think
it's different from linear.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is that the content is so good and we promote it so heavily. As you say, you want to be seen and heard everywhere. We promote radio in Australia. And now we're finding with this kindling, that's starting, we're not supposed to be marketing to under 6-year-olds, but this kindling radio station now, we get lots of feedback from parents saying we have it on in the bag, we have it on in the car. And now there's a whole chain of preschools that are going to put digital radios into their preschools so they can get this kindling children's programming free to air. And we think that's healthy because it starts that habit of listening to radio, or of audio.
It's a great example of identifying and chasing new market segments. You've got any new market segments you can disclose? Got any secrets that you're looking at?
Again, like I said, anything that disrupts my radio station is a competitor. Pokemon came out, and that time we were radio listenership dropped. So what do you do? So to me, my philosophy is I attack everybody. For example, like you have 24 hours in a day, you sleep 8 hours. Some of you are lucky, you sleep maybe 9 hours. Then you go to work at 8 hours, you travel, and then especially if you're in Jakarta, your traveling time is a lot when you listen to radio. But some cities, you get probably 2 hours or 90 minutes of time where you allocate for entertainment. So my job is to think about how am I going to steal that?
Right. While you're thinking about stealing that, I want to bring Aloysius into the conversation now. So Australia and Malaysia, let's go to Singapore, where Aloysius is based. Do you think there's a future for radio in a digital space that's disruptive, multi-platformed, global, and personalised?
I think at the end of the day, really, it's all about content. We talk about radio, we talk about media listening and podcasting. What it boils down to is content. Getting the content out there, having good content that's relevant. And radio, I think what makes radio different from anything else is really what's between music. Again, it comes back to content. Apart from doing it right, putting it down to streams and leading
It's Jake Man in between.
He leads that. But the thing is, apart from doing that, really is the question mark, right? Show me the money, right? You've got to be able to do it and do it right in order to be able to monetize your content. It's no longer a situation where, everybody's streaming, so I've got to stream. Everybody's doing podcasts, I've got to do podcasts. But who's going to pay for that? Who's going to show you the money? Right? So you have to do it right to make sure that your streams are not being taken away to an aggregator site, for example, that's playing your music with your brand on it, and advertising anything and everything, taking the money away from you when you're seeing literally nothing, right? But bear in mind, you're actually paying for the stream. So you're paying the listeners to listen to you, right? Losing control of your brand and allowing the third party to take the money away from you. That's if you're talking about the future, then that's going to be pretty bleak unless you start doing it right.
Except that those providers like Facebook have billions of customers and YouTube. So what they're offering, I agree with you, but what they're offering is a huge amount of instant audience in return for the cut that they take after you give them the service. So tell us a bit more about that. What's your thought on that?
Actually, it's quite interesting from that. I read somewhere yesterday that Sir Martin Sorrell was talking about data analytics from Facebook and Google Analytics. He said maybe they've oversold it because what they realized is P&G came out and said, it's not working for us after spending so much money on digital. The power of radio is the 360 experiential, the great street events, the on-air. It's a combination of everything. Facebook just sells data. It says, 12 to 15 people. And how many of you have actually bought something on Facebook looking at the site ad? I haven't. So, they have the analytics, but it's not in 3D. It doesn't come out in grab. It's just name filing. We can do it. Radio can do it really well.
Well, I think just to add to that, really is, if I may, on digital is not just about the numbers. It's actually getting the ad or the message out there to an audience that will actually consume and believe and trust in it. Right? Look, it's very simple. You go to any website and how many ads are you going to see? I've lost count. But the one thing is, I do know they're there. I just don't look at them anymore. Right? And these are being sold. These are being sold, and people are, like, right, I have to buy 5 million impressions in order to get whatever results. But the thing is that when you do a campaign on radio, so an audience is actually listening to you, mind you, radio streaming, if I may, streaming now is a situation where I choose to listen. If I want to listen to hits, I have to look it up. Press play. That means I want to listen, and if it comes up that there's an ad, I'll think that, you know what, I'm in an ad break. I'll just listen to it, and then after that, I'll get the music, right? But the important thing here is I consume the message. It's no longer, and please, especially the video ads, right? So I think number one, it comes back to this content, right? And how you actually monetize your content correctly, doing things right.
Yes, okay. I want to come back to you and find out a bit more about how how to do that in detail. But I'll bring in Keith here now. Keith, you provide the software that makes a lot of these innovations possible. How does it work, and who's making money from it?
Would you mind if I just reflected first on the comments that have been made here? And the two radio points of view and an online point of view. I think the radio world, if you will, the world is flat in terms of where it's going and the opportunity. I think it's a pretty even playing field for people who are producing content. I think the broadcasters have an advantage, of course, because they're branding and they're well established, and let's be honest, radio is the all-time great wireless device. But I think we keep on hearing content is king, and I think that's right. I think that the radio stations, for example, don't diversify across those mediums. I think it then allows the other players to emerge out of online podcasts. Podcasts seem to be the flavour of the month at the moment, or having a resurgence. There was a comment some time ago, and I know one of the owners of the broadcast company in Australia said to me, that we know transmitters in 20 years. I think that's probably a bit extreme. However, I see the transmitter, I see DAB+, I see online, I see all of those platforms as being the deliverers of content that's being created. And radio makes great content. Been making great content for a long time. But I think that online listenership will grow. I think ultimately that online will overtake terrestrial listening. And I think there are signs of that already in some parts of Asia. So I think the playing field is a lot more even than it was. But I don't think there is the death of radio imminent at all. I am interested in what is the disruption to radio, one of the three key mediums. We all know about newspapers, books. We all know about TV. So what is it that's going to be the disruption for radio, or is this the disruption of radio, or having all these other platforms by which to deliver the content?
Actually, I reckon radio faced its disruption much earlier than
you think so?
other
And
platforms.
many times.
Yeah, many times.
Oh, it's the great survivor. There's no question. And just on that, to support the argument of the radio people here before I get to the software side, should I ever get an opportunity to talk about software? The Red FM COO, Nisha Narayanan, had some interesting things to say about the medium, and I thought this kind of capsulised it pretty well. The competition isn't with the other radio stations, the competition is with technology. And as a conventional medium, radio will not disappear. We must understand that radio is a brand, not just a medium of entertainment. And she goes on to say some other things. But I think that...
I remember covering her on Major Radio Today.
I'm not quite sure where I pinched that from. Let's say it was from that. So yeah, I think that it's an even playing field, and radio has a distinct advantage because they are great content creators, but they must use those platforms, those other platforms, to remain relevant and create content. I think the audience become the queens. I think I saw that description earlier today. The audience plays a big part of this because ultimately radio or the content producers will know the name and address, the age, the email address, and so they will play a greater part in the content creation, I think. We're in the fortunate position that no matter who takes on content creation and content playout, we are in a position where we can manage that. We have many clients who use our software for obviously terrestrial radio, obviously for online. We take it to a point, and then we provide the services. Others provide the services beyond that, but we can, within our software, Playout Software Centre at the moment, create a podcast on the fly. And we have many clients who are buying our software as against traditional radio because they're getting into the internet radio, if you like, and all of those other types of platforms, because it's a bit of a gold rush in a sense if you've got the strength of the brand in mind.
So technically, how do you do it? Is it a matter of feeding the data, the song name and the pictures via XML and then
Via an API.
encoding?
Via an API, essentially, you can pretty much suck anything out of the system that's associated with put it into the brand. I mean, you see it quite often now. It's on the website. You'll see the billboard saying what the song is. That can then trigger visuals. Aloysius will know more about it than I as to where it goes, but we can provide exports, if you will, to any of those platforms on the site. Is that as you?
Aloysius, I do want to come back to you and find out a bit more about this ad insertion software.
Right.
Just how does it work?
Well, essentially, the thing is, right now what we're doing is we're taking a coffee. Most of us, or most radio stations, will do a simulcast of the FM broadcast and do a linear stream on that. And of course, the ads are all baked into the stream itself. The question is how when we know it's going to an ad break, and when you're going to have to then replace it. And mind you, every single stream is by itself going to an individual listener. And with the Internet of Things, really is that the timing is all over the place, right? So what we're able to do is, recognize in every stream where they're going into the commercial, doing a very tight integration with people like RCS to know when the actual stream is going into commercial. Line them up so that when the stream does go to commercial, the ad server kicks in and then it delivers the ads accordingly, right? And when we get another market that says, well, you know what, coming off the commercial break, we'll finish up with that and then stitch it back into the stream. It's actually quite simple in the whole thing, but in the actual execution, it takes a lot more technology behind it. But it is doable. We are doing it and doing it very well for Astro Radio and a lot of other radio stations. And we're actually seeing the opportunity now to have more inventory to sell, and you sell it in a different way. FM radio, broadcast radio. We all know in some ways, don't aim for saying this, but it's spray and pray, right? Whereas on digital, it is very much this. If you are listening, I'll deliver you an ad, and if you've given me information about you, great. And that ad, when it's delivered, we track to see whether there's a full listen through or not, and that gets reported back to the advertiser. So the advertiser essentially doesn't have to look for 1 million listeners, but if I'm targeting a certain group and that's what's available to me, then I'll do that. And it becomes very efficient.
I really like the idea of selling content more than once, and I guess that's what the service offers. Jake, are you finding that there's extra money in this kind of double selling?
Initially, we had to go to the advertising agencies and explain why we are selling it twice. But I think you see, says, hey, hang on, I thought I paid for the your normal linear stream, your internet stream.
But it's okay, it's in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, but definitely something that we are looking forward to, because I get from my digital guys that you're running out of battery, so that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is a good problem when you're running out of inventory. I want to ask you about Raku, your Astro's music streaming service. What are you doing with that?
We're in a bit of a predicament because music rights are very expensive. Like I said, you cannot halt players like Spotify and the rest are coming in. And Spotify has done a very good merge with the local telco. So they just embedded stuff into more people with Maxis or other players. So what Raku is facing is, because the rights are so expensive, I think we'll be forced to slightly shift our strategy, which we're working on right now. But the main strategy for Raku is actually to be a purveyor of local music, which has worked. So we're driving that. But unlike Spotify, what Raku does is also use the 9 radio stations we have, and to drive content across that way. So that's
a bit like Clear Channel's Ahern Radio,
yes,
which is a hybrid. It's another way of delivering the live radio services, but then a music collection as well.
But the rights will have to be, because that's the only way these guys are making money. So the rights is exorbitant.
across the whole region, I mean, Australia's just faced it with a big rights dispute just for standard broadcasting, let alone music streaming. But
streaming of your
Simulcast. Like you
simulcasting.
like you showed Pandora's, they're making a lot of money, but the margins are.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that musicians, and you've got to give them their due for trying to collect as much money as they can, but what the collecting societies sometimes forget is that they've been making small but steady money from radio broadcasters for a century, and this is something new, but is there a real business model if you gouge huge amounts of rights payments?
So what can you do? I mean, in the end, we are having problems in Malaysia also with several, there's prison, there's MACP, and I heard they're all going to be amalgamated or merged into one soon. So, we have no rights paying, we have no problems paying rights. In fact, we want to keep the music alive. That's bread and butter with people, but it needs to be, you can't kill the host. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Joan,
That's what
any
they
thoughts on that?
Oh, well, we think the rights holders are unreasonable. We just had a very, very, very expensive and long-running copyright tribunal case with our record industry on the cost of simulcast, where we say because we don't, simulcast is a simulcast. It's exactly the same as a broadcast. So we say to them, we make no more money out of simulcast, but we are spreading your music far and wide. Their attitude is we want as much money out of you as we can get. Now, we fought a very hard fight, and it was a very long case and a very expensive case, but we got a good result for ourselves. We weren't fighting a case for music streaming services, and in fact, a couple of our big networks also flirted with music streaming services and shut them down after a while. And I think part of the problem was the excessive rights. Now, we don't champion music streaming services at all, but at the same time, we don't see them as competition. What we said to the record industry was, the numbers that are streaming are also quite small compared to the numbers that listen via broadcast. Everyone listens via both, but the majority of listening is still done by broadcast. So what you're trying to do is chop off another avenue for people to hear radio and hear your music, their attitude. And it's not the record industry that are like this, not the publishers, not the songwriters, but it's we don't care. We just want to get as much money as we can. And I can't see from, and from our radio perspective, we really didn't get any feeling that they appreciated all the free publicity, all the free promotion that radio gives to their music artists. They just, and in fact in court they dismissed that and said things like nobody listens to the radio anymore.
I think it's a big issue for the whole region, and across Asia, there should be some collective bargaining from broadcasters. Keith?
Joan, I was just going to ask Joan a question on that. So this means that this extra revenue stream, and I understand from Aloysius that we add insertion outside of the territory, for example. Today, FM from Sydney broadcasting up into Asia with that insertion on the various markets. That means that, and it's quite substantial money can be made out of that, I understand. So that is not part of the simulcast has to contain the original commercials, or is it the music? So that is an option for revenue generation.
Yeah, there's an option. As part of the agreement, they can insert ads if they want to, but the listening, what we're finding with ad agencies and advertisers is saying, well, how many people are listening to your broadcast? That you were going to insert a different ad, and how many of those people are going to be interested in my ad, and is it 5 out of 5,000? Well, I'm not going to pay you much for that. What they are paying for in Australia is integration across our website and across our social media platforms, and also outdoor, as you say, being involved in integrated advertising and integrated events that are run by radio stations and promoted throughout as part of the brand. And it's you were saying earlier, I think radio is the ultimate word of mouth, and that's what our advertisers and agencies are saying. At the moment, they're saying, yeah, sure, if you want to throw in a couple of ads in simulcast, we haven't got to that point yet, we're not doing it yet, but if you want to do that, that's great. But, the numbers are very small. in comparison to the broadcast. And it's not just Ray and Ray, it's much more sophisticated these days. And the offerings from radio stations are much more sophisticated and multi-layered and much more targeted. And now with digital, of course, as we've said, we've got a kids station that has got new advertisers on it that have never advertised in radio in Australia at all in the past. And we've got now an English Premier Soccer League station. I don't know how that'll do, but again, they'll get different advertisers because it's a target group. But yeah, where we're finding advertisers and agencies are interested is in that multi-platform. Get us onto your social media sites. Get us, into your events. Let us sponsor the Red Room, which Nova does, which is big artists, big music artists coming out and performing to a small number, but also being broadcast live on the website. So the ad insertion isn't a money spinner for us yet, and I think it's something our guys will try to see if they can get any money out of it. But I think until the numbers listen to the simulcast are much greater, and that's growing very, very slowly in Australia, then there won't be a lot of money to be made for us. That won't be the same all over the world.
Okay, we'll talk programming, technology and advertising. Does anyone in the room want to raise a topic before I move on to the next one? Question, topic? No? Last chance? Okay. Aloysius, I've heard you say it's not just about just do it, it's more like just do it right. What do you mean?
I think the example earlier was that everybody, so most radio stations know that they have to stream, right? And there would be quite a fair amount that are streaming, but are you getting back data to know how many listeners you have, what are the habits, whether they listen to, how long do they listen, what are the patterns, right? And who are these people? Because not knowing that means you can't monetize them. Not even going into a little bit more technical, like first party and third party data. Because agencies will need that, and you touched on programmatic earlier as well. Agencies depend on that information in order to make a decision to buy or not to buy, or to insert or not to insert. The other part about it is really guarding what is your content and making sure that you are able to fully monetize your content, your streams. That means making sure that third-party aggregator sites do not take the streams and sell it for pittance, brand it in any ways that they like to or that they want to, and make money off of that because you are paying for that. Right? I mean, we're in Indonesia, so go to Radio Indonesia online or streaming radios in Indonesia and look at the plethora of radio station streams that are there, okay, and the kind of advertising that's done there. The website owners are making the money. Application developers who take your stream and put it onto the apps, they're making money. Are you seeing a single red cent from that? If you're not, then you're not doing it right. Right? It's your content. It's your investment.
That's the advertising side of it, but you've also raised audience research. And Jake, if I can come to you. In Australia, we've changed our audience research company a couple of years ago, and in Malaysia, you also made a change. Why was that done, and what do you find?
We used Nielsen for about 16 years, served its purpose for that period. But what we've found in Malaysia was because, unlike Australia, where you focus on city, ours was very national, so it's quite extensive. Second thing is we realized the books were not going to condos, where the Gen X and Gen Ys were actually in urban areas and condos, so we couldn't get an e-diary out. So I think the next best thing was to move to GFK, which showed us some very, very reassuring numbers. We ran a parallel with Nielsen at that time. Just one thing we saw was our English listenership was dropping off. So you're thinking, why? But when we went to GFK and make a survey comparison, it was actually quite high. So this is attracting serious revenue for us. So we use the CPM logic. So looked again at the GFK plans. We were very reassured. So that's why it's like.
Is the currency cum or averages?
Depends on the station. Reach is of course cum is of course the currency, but we're trying to move away from it, which is quite tough to say, like agencies still use that as currency, but for some stations, like, I have to give props to stations like BFM, which is a very niche business station, using smaller numbers but very focused demographic. There's monsters like Era, which are almost like 4 million reach, but there are small stations like Mix FM, which has got 400,000 people writing decent revenue. Like what Joan said, it's experiential. We're selling everything across the platforms and gelling it all together. So, that you can't get from other. In fact, I think the paradigm shift for us will be operating more as creative agencies in the future, which we are already doing, but not calling ourselves creative agencies for advertisers. I think that's the shift we see.
In the Malaysian GFK system, you said you're not using electronic, so it's still book diaries?
Book diaries, 20%, not sure. Oh, no, 20%
okay,
diaries.
so it's similar to Australia with a mix of online diaries. Joan, can you just talk about how the online diary works?
Well, we changed from Nielsen after 66 years.
Big change.
Yes, and we got.
I think there are people in Indonesia who are listening very carefully.
66 years Australian radio used Nielsen, and that was all we had to do. That was all we needed to do to get the agencies having a party, because they thought we would never ever change. But we too changed to GFK, and we started with them in 2014. We have 20% online recruitment and online diary, and 80% interviewer recruitment and hard copy diary, which is then picked up. They're recruited from external panels, external research panels. We survey in total every year 60,000 people across the major metros and 3 major regionals. And now we've just started doing smaller areas, and we've already done 21 smaller regional areas, not with the GFK methodology, but a new methodology that we're using, which is not as complex. But the online diary works the same as the as the paper diary, except people are recruited online, and they fill it out online. They can fill it out on their phone, on you know all about this, on an iPad, on their computer, whatever. And it's cheaper if you mix it up.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Yes, well, of course, you don't have to print so many books. There's 20% less books printed.
Analog books.
Analog books and pens and pencils. But it's not people methods, is it?
And aren't we glad about that?
Yes.
After we saw what happened in the US, where the PPM was withdrawn. And we were given a hard sell for a long time. Go people meters, go people meters, go people meters. And we kept saying no, because they don't record all the listening. And if you leave your people meter at home, there are problems with the recall method. We don't say it's perfect, but it's the gold standard. But if you left your people meter at home, you never get that listening back. And if one person drops out of your small panel, you might lose a quarter of your young urban blacks in an American city. So I sent all those articles around to the agencies and said, aren't you glad we didn't adopt the PPM? Because 3 times as expensive, and I think maybe a third as reliable.
I'll come to all of you for a short final comment. Joan, we didn't spend lots of time on digital radio, so can you start with some final comments and just touch on digital radio and IP, DAB and IP?
Okay, we think that the future for radio is a hybrid future. We think you can't rely, certainly in Australia, AM broadcasting has some major problems, yet some of our biggest, most popular stations are talk stations, and they're on the A&R. FM too sometimes has multi-path interference in various areas. We don't trust IP to deliver our broadcast and our quality content with the same robustness and reliability. We see it as a great supplement and complement to our broadcast, but we know that in times of stress, mobile networks fall over. And, I drive into my job along a main road, and if a truck goes by, my 4G network will sometimes drop out. So if we were going to trust all our business to IP, we'd be in trouble at the moment. We believe that you need to have a broadcast future, We in Australia and many other places believe DAB Plus is that future because it allows you to multi-channel. There's lots of cheap receivers out there now. We were selling them in Australia for $15 Australian last Christmas. They're in lots and lots and lots of cars now. In the UK, I think 80% of new cars come out with DAB+. But we believe you need a hybrid future. You need to be able to use the power of your broadcast, complemented by simulcast or streaming, but you need the back channel and with DAB+, you can broadcast pictures and links and web links and coupons and all. It's broadcast free to air, but then your consumer or your listener can use the back channel to take up those offers and to interact with the radio station. So we're working towards a hybrid future for radio broadcast and simulcast combined with what I call the push of broadcast, the push power and reliability of broadcast with the interactivity afforded to your listener by iPad.
Jake, some final thoughts from you.
I agree with Joan. I think as many people have prophesied the radio will be comatose by I think 2000, and we're still alive and kicking. And I think the most important thing that I would take out of my 22 years in radio is if you got great content, people will come to you. And these days, it's just not about music. Back in the day, I used to work with Brian Ford and some of the greats, and it's just not about a clock or a talk break or words we use like that because playlists debunks that completely. It's great content. People come to you with it, and linear radio listenership. Like you saying, Joan, you can get access to the content across all this diversified platforms. It's fantastic. We work as a creative agency. We bring, sort of a life to the product better than anybody. I'll give you an example, a very quick example. Mercedes came to us last year and says, hey, our market share is terrible in Malaysia. We're perceived as a very old Chinese uncle car, which means an old man driving a car. What can we do? I said, you know what? Let's not even talk about the car. Let's do some great concepts. Let's put it on digital. We did a very, very good concept. Their market share went up by 47%, completely done on radio and across this platform. So again, like I said, we tell a story better than anybody else, And I always tell people this: have you seen any car with a TV sticker at the back? Never. You only see a radio station. So there's some affinity to that. I've never seen somebody put out a TV3 or never.
Aloysius, some last words from you.
Last words. I think I hold a slightly different view to it. The thing is that when you talk about IP, don't just think about 3G, 4G, think about the future as well, which is actually here, Wi-Fi and wireless, right? I'm not saying that radio will die. The transmitter is always going to be there. It will always be there. But I think we have to recognize the fact that the audience, the people that we talk to are changing, the technology is changing. This is very prevalent, right? And definitely IP is there. So don't forget about it. And when you're doing it, don't just do it because everybody's doing it. Do it for a reason and own your content, guard your content, monetize your content because that's your future. I mean, bottom line is this, most of us come from a company or have bosses who report to the bottom line, the revenue and everything there, right? So that's important and we need to guard that and not let somebody come in and take the lunch away and you don't even know it. I mean, personally for me it would be, I think, while tuning is great, they're your biggest enemies because they're taking your money away from you. They have advertising there. Are you seeing a single red cent from them? Right? So think about what you're doing and, guard your content.
Keith, last word.
Radio is battlefield, there's no question about that. It's been through more wars than any other medium. I'm encouraged that there are 266 channels in 92 cities about to be auctioned in India. FM radio is quite young in India. I'm encouraged by the fact there's only 0.7% ADAC share for radio in Indonesia, which means there's plenty of growth to come. And I know that there are some moves afoot to change that. However, I'm also weary of the fact that most technologies are leapfrogged. If you think about it, most technologies get leapfrogged somewhere along the line. I think radio needs to be battle fit. All the signs are good so far, certainly in Australia, which is a very mature market, that they need to be in the trenches and take on all comers. But I think they are a distinct advantage being content creators and own a platform and are aware of other platforms. So I think that the future is bright, but I wouldn't rest on my laurels just yet on anything. And adopt probably is the word.
So the future's good for radio as long as we remain battle fit. Thank you very much for sharing our sessions on radio. Please thank our panelists.